She served the Alpha's Luna for years, until he saw the scars she gave her and went feral. Ilara walked silently along the cobblestone paths, her hands folded neatly before her, her eyes cast downward. She had served Lady Seraphine, the Alpha's Luna, for many years, moving like a shadow in the palace, present yet unseen. She knew the rules. She knew her place. And yet, despite her careful obedience, a quiet ache lived in her chest, a longing she could never voice. Lady Seraphine's chambers were always warm, the air scented with lavender and candle smoke. Ilara knelt by the fire, folding the Luna's gowns with precision, as Seraphine reclined on the chaise, her eyes half closed in boredom. "Ilara," she said finally, her voice smooth and cold, "have the new envoys from the southern clans arrived?" Ilara glanced up briefly, nodding. "Yes, my lady, they are in the great hall waiting for your presence." Seraphine sighed, lifting a delicate hand. "Very well, make sure everything is prepared. And Ilara," she paused, her tone softer, almost hesitant, "do not neglect yourself." Ilara's fingers froze. A gentle warning or a rare kindness. In Seraphine's eyes, such moments were fleeting. She bowed her head and left, keeping her expression neutral. Outside the chamber, the corridor stretched dark and silent, torches flickering against the cold stone walls. The Alpha's presence was everywhere in the castle. Kalen, the ruler of the northern packs, moved like a force of nature, silent yet commanding. No one dared approach him without careful thought, and even servants like Ilara felt the weight of his gaze without him noticing. Kalen's wolf form, legendary throughout the kingdom, lived only in whispers, glimpses in the forest at twilight, and in the tales told by those who feared and revered him alike. Ilara often wondered what it would feel like to meet the Alpha's gaze directly, to be acknowledged not as a servant but as a person. But she knew better than to indulge in such thoughts. The morning passed in a blur of duties, polishing silver, attending to the Luna's needs, and keeping watch for any disturbance in the castle. But by afternoon, the tension in the air thickened. Whispers ran through the corridors, servants and guards speculating about a disturbance in the forest. Ilara found herself drawn to the garden, where the palace met the edge of the wild woods. The roses there were dark red, almost black under the shadow of the castle walls. The wind carried a chill, rustling the leaves with a quiet, urgent energy. She knelt by a small fountain, brushing her fingers through the water, when a sudden presence made her heart skip. Kalen stepped from the shadows. He was taller than she imagined, broader, and his eyes, amber, sharp and wild, fixed on her. For a moment she could not speak. "You," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Why do you spend so much time in the garden?" Ilara rose quickly, curtsying. "My lord, "You do not need to lie to me," he interrupted. His gaze softened slightly, though it was still fierce. "I can see more than most." Ilara felt a strange heat rise to her cheeks. He could see her, not her role, not her servitude, but her. And then he stepped closer, and she noticed the scars on her arms, faint but visible even in the sunlight. Kalen's eyes widened, a sharp, almost painful expression crossing his features. He reached out, not touching, only hovering a hand near her arm as if the sight had struck him deeply. "What happened to you?" he asked. Ilara looked away, her fingers tightening. "It is nothing, my lord. Old wounds, they do not matter." "They do," he said quietly. The word was so firm, so certain, that it startled her. "You are more than you show, more than the chains you wear here." For the first time, Ilara felt something stir within her, a dangerous mix of fear and longing. Kalen's presence was commanding, terrifying, but there was a vulnerability there too, beneath the surface of the Alpha. She had spent years serving silently, always careful to hide her thoughts, her pain, her scars, and now he had seen them. "I serve the Luna," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "My life is for her, not for—" She trailed off, unsure how to name the force that pulled her toward him. Kalen's lips tightened, and he looked away briefly, as if fighting a struggle within himself. Then slowly he turned back to her, his gaze softening just enough to break her heart. "And yet you are here," he said, voice low and rough with emotion. "Always at the edge of everything but never seen until now." Alara swallowed hard. "I am nothing, my lord, a shadow." "No," Kalen said firmly. "Not a shadow. You are fire." The word struck her more than any touch could. Her chest heaved and she had to turn away, blinking to hide the sudden tears threatening to fall. She had lived her life in shadows, quietly enduring, quietly serving, and now the Alpha himself had noticed her, had recognized her strength, her pain. A distant cry from the castle gates drew both their attention. Kalen's posture stiffened instantly, every muscle alert, every instinct sharp. He was the Alpha, and his world was always on the brink of chaos. Alara felt a pang of fear. She knew that when Kalen's wolf instincts surfaced, there was no controlling them. The legends spoke of him losing all restraint, of becoming something both terrifying and majestic. And now, having glimpsed her scars, he seemed to teeter on that edge. "Stay close," he said suddenly, his hand brushing lightly against her elbow, not forceful but grounding, anchoring her. "There is danger in the woods tonight. I will not let it touch you." Alara nodded, her breath shallow, her heart pounding. She had served the Luna for years, hiding her own desires, her own fears, yet she felt herself drawn into something larger, more potent, something that could not be ignored. They moved together through the palace corridors, Kalen leading with an unspoken authority. Guards bowed, servants whispered, but the Alpha seemed only to see her. And in that gaze she felt something that had been absent all her life, acknowledgement, understanding, and an electric pull that made her pulse race. In the garden at night, under the silver glow of the moon, Kalen stopped. The forest beyond rustled, alive with unseen creatures and whispered magic. He turned to her, his amber eyes glinting. "You carry your battles on your skin," he said softly, "but I see the courage beneath. I see you, Alara, and it frightens me." Alara felt a tremor run through her. Fear, yes, fear of him, fear of what she felt, fear of the wild, untamed power in his presence. And yet there was also a strange hope, a spark she had not known could exist. I do not know if I can be more than a servant," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I am not worthy of your attention." Kalen stepped closer, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. "You are worthy," he said, almost fiercely, "and I cannot ignore you anymore. Not after seeing what you hide, not after feeling what stirs when I am near you." The night deepened, the moonlight casting pale shadows across the stone walls and garden paths. Alara and Kalen stood there, the world around them silent, waiting, as though it too sensed the fragile, dangerous bond beginning to form. "You must be careful," she whispered finally, her gaze lowering. "The palace, the Luna, they will never forgive this." Kalen's hand hovered near hers, but he did not touch. His amber eyes searched hers, fierce and tender at once. "Then we will be careful together," he said. "But some fires cannot be hidden, Alara. Some truths cannot be silenced." For the first time in years she felt seen. Truly seen. And in that moment she knew nothing in her life would ever be the same. A sudden howl echoed from the forest, deep and resonant, shaking the leaves and rattling the castle windows. Kalen's posture tensed, his wolf instincts flaring. Alara felt a thrill of fear and excitement ripple through her. He turned to her, eyes smoldering. "Stay close," he said again, his voice a growl barely contained. "I do not know how long I can hold back." Alara swallowed hard, the night air cold on her skin, and nodded. She understood the danger, the longing, the raw power in him. And she understood, too, that her life of quiet service, of shadows and silence, had ended the moment he saw her scars. As the forest's howl grew louder, a promise of storm and unrest in the air, she knew one thing for certain. Nothing could prepare her for the fire Kalen had awakened in her, or the storm that was coming. The night held its breath, the palace walls standing as silent witnesses to the first sparks of a bond that would change everything. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Alara realized that the alpha had gone feral, not yet in body, but in heart, because of her. And she, in turn, had felt the first tremor of something that would not be denied, the dangerous, intoxicating pull of a love neither of them could yet name. The moon hung low over the castle, spilling silver light across the courtyard. A thin mist curled along the stone paths, and the quiet of the night was broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Alara moved silently, her steps measured, her heart still racing from the encounter in the garden earlier that day. Kaelin had disappeared after that night, leaving her with a storm of emotions she did not yet understand. Fear, yes, but also a strange warmth, a pull that lingered like the echo of a heartbeat. She tried to focus on her duties, but her mind wandered. Every shadow in the hallways seemed to hide him. Every sound in the castle hinted at his presence. As dawn broke, she found herself in the kitchens, arranging herbs and preparing tea for Lady Seraphine. The Luna sat at the table, her usual poised expression unbroken, though her eyes flickered toward Alara with a subtle curiosity. "Your mind wanders, as always," Seraphine remarked, her tone light but sharp. "Careful, or you will make mistakes." Alara bowed her head. "Yes, my lady, I will focus." But focus was difficult. Kaelin's amber eyes haunted her, his words lingering like fire on her skin. Some truths cannot be silenced. It was not until mid-afternoon that Kaelin returned. The great doors of the castle hall swung open silently, and he stepped inside, moving with the quiet authority that made even the guards step back instinctively. He did not speak at first. Instead, his gaze scanned the hall until it landed on her. Alara froze, her hands gripping the edge of the table. He was closer than before, his presence a physical weight pressing down on the space between them. "You linger too long in the shadows," Kaelin said, his voice low, almost dangerous. "Do you not tire of hiding?" "I serve the Luna," she said quickly, bowing her head. "I have no place beyond my duties." He stepped closer until only a single breath separated them. "Your duties do not define you, Alara. I see the strength behind your servitude. I see what you hide from the world, and even from yourself." Alara's chest tightened. She had lived her life with walls around her heart, shielding her from longing, from pain, from attention. But Kaelin looked through them as if they were nothing, exposing both her scars and her courage. "Why do you care?" she asked softly, a hint of fear threading through her words. "I am nothing to you." "You are everything," he said simply. The words were raw, unpolished, but filled with an intensity that made her pulse hammer. "And it terrifies me." Before she could reply, a distant alarm echoed through the castle. The gates had been breached. Guards shouted, weapons clanged, and the warning bells rang sharply through the corridors. Kaelin's posture changed instantly, his calm replaced by something wild, something feral. "Stay here," he ordered, his eyes locking on hers. "Do not move." Alara wanted to argue, to follow him, but she knew better. She nodded, barely daring to breathe as he vanished into the chaos of the castle. From the tower window she watched him move. There was no hesitation, no fear, only raw power and precision. He fought with a fluidity that was almost inhuman, his movements too fast, too strong, too alive. The stories were true. The Alpha's wolf nature was not just legend. And yet, even in the middle of battle, he seemed to search for her. His amber eyes flicked to the balcony where she watched, and for a moment the feral light dimmed, replaced by something almost tender, almost human. When the fight ended, Kaelin returned, brushing past the remaining guards, his chest heaving, his gaze locked on hers. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, concern threading through the feral intensity of his eyes. "Yes," she whispered, though her knees shook beneath her. He studied her, his jaw tight, his hands clenching. "Do not think you can remain untouched by this world, Alara. Danger will follow you no matter where you hide." Alara's lips trembled. "Then I will stay where I belong." "No," he said sharply, stepping closer. "You belong where you are seen, where you are respected, where you are safe." And I will make sure of it, even if it means fighting monsters both human and otherwise. That evening, in the quiet of the garden once more, Kalen finally spoke more freely. The night wind played with his dark hair, the mist curling around him like a cloak. I cannot control what stirs inside me when I am near you, he admitted, his voice low, almost a whisper. It is not just desire, it is protectiveness, longing, anger, all tangled together. I have fought it, but I cannot anymore. Alara swallowed hard. She had known he was dangerous, but she did not expect this. To hear him admit it, to see the raw edge in his eyes, was overwhelming. You frighten me, she confessed, and yet I cannot look away. Kalen's expression softened just a fraction and he stepped closer, the moonlight casting his shadow across hers. You are not meant to fear me, he said quietly. I am not your enemy, but I am complicated. And if you stay near me, you will see every side of me, the light and the darkness, the control and the chaos. I want to see you, she whispered, though a part of her trembled. He nodded slowly, a subtle tension leaving his body as he allowed himself a moment of quiet. Then you must be brave, he said, for what comes next will test both of us. The night deepened around them. The palace was silent except for the wind through the trees and the occasional distant howl of a wolf. Alara felt a shiver of anticipation. Something had shifted. The alpha had been awakened by her presence, and the feral power within him had been stirred. She was no longer merely a servant in the shadows. She was now part of something larger, something dangerous, something alive. Days passed, and the tension between them grew. Kalen moved through the castle with purpose, always near her, always aware of her presence. Alara could feel his gaze even when he was not there. It was a silent claim, a warning, a promise. One afternoon, she found herself in the palace library, arranging books as she often did. Kalen appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, his arms crossed. You read too much, he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Knowledge will not keep you safe from what lurks outside these walls. I read to understand, she replied calmly, meeting his gaze. The world is bigger than the castle. And yet it is dangerous, he said. The packs beyond the northern forest are restless. The southern clans test our borders, and now there are whispers of forces older than any of us. Alara's curiosity sparked despite her fear. Older forces, Kalen's eyes darkened. Magic, old curses, shadows that remember their anger. Things that can tear kingdoms apart if we are not careful, she shivered. The weight of his words sank into her chest. But alongside the fear there was excitement. Adventure, danger, the unknown, and the alpha himself, moving through it all, always aware of her. That night in the garden once more, Kalen revealed something that chilled her. He had always kept the wolf inside him tightly controlled, balanced between human and beast. But now, after seeing her scars, feeling her presence, something primal had awakened. The feral part of him, untamed, powerful, dangerous, was no longer entirely under his control. You must understand, he said, his amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. I am not just a man. The wolf inside me responds to strength, to courage, to fire. And you, Alara, you have lit a fire I cannot ignore. Alara's heart pounded. Fear, awe, and something deeper stirred within her. She had always been careful, always measured, always obedient. But with Kalen, the rules no longer applied. The tension between them crackled like electricity in the air. You are frightening, she whispered. And you are remarkable, he replied, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. I do not know if I can remain entirely human when I am near you. She stepped closer, her own fear mingling with a strange thrill. Then perhaps I do not want you to. For a long moment they simply stared at each other, the world around them fading to silence. Only the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the promise of storms yet to come. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of the garden. Kalen stiffened, his hand reaching instinctively toward the hilt of his sword. Alara followed his gaze, her breath catching in her throat. Something waited in the dark, something old, something that belonged neither to the castle nor to the forest, and it was watching them. Kalen stepped forward, placing himself between the shadow and her. "Do not move," he warned, his voice low and dangerous. Alara nodded, her heart racing. The Alpha was no longer simply Kalen, the ruler of the northern packs. He was Kalen, the Alpha, the wolf, the protector, the danger, and he had claimed her in a way that could not be undone. The shadow shifted closer and Kalen growled softly, a deep, rumbling sound that resonated through the air. His eyes glowed amber, fierce and wild. Alara felt the raw, untamed power in him and knew that the night was only beginning. The bond between them had awakened something feral, something untamable. And in the silence of the moonlit garden, Alara understood that nothing, neither danger nor duty, nor the world itself, could separate them now. The storm was coming. And together they would face it, fierce, unbroken and bound by fire and shadow. The sun rose slowly over the northern forest, spilling gold and amber across the castle walls. The morning mist lingered like a veil, curling around the towers, and Alara walked through the courtyard, her hands folded before her. Sleep had been restless. Images of Kalen's amber eyes haunted her, and the memory of his feral presence in the garden at night burned fresh in her mind. She had never known a longing so intense, a pull that felt both dangerous and vital. The castle felt alive with tension. Guards moved silently through the halls, whispering of unrest in the northern territories. Rumors spoke of rival clans testing the Alpha's strength, of magic stirring in the forests beyond. And yet, for Alara, the tension in the castle paled against the tension she felt in her own chest. Kalen had awakened something in her that she could not ignore, and she feared what it might demand of her. She was arranging herbs in the Luna's chambers when a shadow fell across the doorway. Kalen stood there, tall and commanding, his presence filling the room. His amber eyes searched hers, and for a moment he simply watched her, silent but alert. "Alara," he said finally, his voice low and rough, "we need to talk." She swallowed hard, setting down the herbs. "Yes, my lord." He stepped closer, but his movement was careful, measured. The tension in the room was thick, almost tangible. "The wolf inside me, it grows stronger every day," he admitted, his gaze dropping to her scars. "I have tried to control it, to keep it in check, but seeing you, feeling you, it stirs something I cannot suppress." Alara's pulse quickened. She had seen the feral side of him once in the garden at night, and it had terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. "I do not want you to be afraid," she said softly. I am not afraid of you." Kalen's lips pressed into a thin line. "It is not fear I feel. It is protectiveness, longing, desire, all tangled together, and it frightens me." Alara's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, to reach out, but she paused, sensing the storm that lingered in his eyes. "Then let me help you," she whispered. "I do not need to hide anymore. You do not need to fight alone." For a moment, Kalen looked uncertain, torn between his instincts and his desire. Then he reached out, his hand hovering near her shoulder, trembling slightly. "You carry your battles on your skin," he said quietly. "And yet your strength is what calls to me. I do not know if I can remain myself with you so close." Alara stepped forward, closing the distance. "Then do not try to remain yourself," she said. "Let me see you, Kalen, all of you." The words hung between them, heavy and fragile, as if the air itself waited for a response. Kalen's jaw tightened, and he exhaled slowly, the tension in his body barely contained. "You are remarkable," he said finally, "and dangerous." "I am nothing without my scars," she said, touching her arm lightly. "They remind me who I am, who I've survived to become, and now I want to survive alongside you." Kalen's eyes softened just slightly, but the feral edge remained, a shadow beneath the warmth. "We are not safe here," he warned. "Not in the castle, not in the forest, not even in the lands we rule. Forces older than us are stirring, and they will not forgive weakness." Alara nodded. "Then we must face them together. I will not run." That evening, the Luna entered the room unexpectedly. Seraphine's gaze swept over the two of them, sharp and measured. "I sense a change," she said quietly. "The bond between you, it has shifted. Be careful, Ilara. You are no longer just a servant in the shadows." Ilara bowed her head, her heart pounding. "I understand, my lady." Kaelin's presence was quiet but protective behind her. She felt the unspoken warning. They were no longer hidden, and the consequences of their bond would ripple far beyond the castle walls. The night came with an uneasy calm. Ilara found herself wandering the castle gardens again, as if drawn by some invisible thread. The mist hugged the ground, curling around the rose bushes and statues, and the moonlight painted silver shadows across the paths. Kaelin appeared silently beside her, his movements fluid, predatory, yet controlled. "You should not wander alone," he said softly. "I am not alone," she replied, her voice steady. "I have you." He studied her, his gaze intense. "Do you understand what this means?" She nodded. "I understand that danger will follow us, that our choices have consequences, but I also understand that I cannot hide from this from you. Not anymore." Kaelin exhaled, the sound almost a growl. "You have seen the scars I bear too," he admitted, his voice low. "Not just on my body but on my soul, and still you do not turn away." "I do not fear you," she said simply, "and I will not fear what is inside you." The tension between them deepened, raw and undeniable. Kaelin took a step closer, until the air between them seemed to shimmer with energy. "Then know this," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Once the wolf is fully awake, there is no turning back. You will see me in ways no one else can. And you will see yourself reflected in me, your strength, your fire, your scars." Ilara felt her breath catch. "Then let it awaken," she said. The following days brought more than whispers and tension. Reports arrived of rival clans gathering at the forest edges, testing the Alpha's strength, probing for weaknesses. Kaelin moved through the castle and forest with unmatched precision, always alert, always protective. And always, it seemed, aware of Ilara's presence, watching her from shadows and corridors with a quiet intensity that made her pulse race. One evening, a messenger arrived, breathless and pale. "My lord," he said to Kaelin, "the southern clans are moving against us. They have enlisted forces we cannot face alone." Kaelin's jaw tightened, his amber eyes flashing with a dangerous light. "Gather the pack," he ordered. "Prepare for battle, and protect the Luna at all costs." Ilara's heart raced. She wanted to step forward to offer her strength, but Kaelin placed a hand gently on her shoulder, holding her back. "Not yet," he said. "Your strength is needed, but your safety is more. Watch, learn, and be ready." The Alpha moved like a storm through the castle and forest, commanding, fierce, and untamed. Ilara followed from a distance, her heart aching with longing and fear. She had never seen him like this, not as a man, not as a ruler, but as something far greater, far wilder. That night, as the battle raged in the forest outskirts, Kaelin returned, covered in sweat and dirt, his wolf form barely restrained. He had fought the enemy with a ferocity that stunned even the most loyal warriors. Yet when his eyes found Ilara, his feral nature softened, just enough to reveal the depth of his connection to her. "You are remarkable," he said, his voice rough. "Even in danger, even in chaos, you remain unbroken, and it is that strength that keeps me grounded." Ilara stepped closer, her fingers brushing against his arm. "And you keep me safe," she whispered, "even when you are yourself." Kaelin's gaze lingered on her, fierce and tender at once. "I cannot promise I will not lose control," he admitted. "But I promise this, I will fight for you, for us, no matter what comes." The night stretched long and quiet after that. The forest, though scarred by conflict, was alive with whispered magic and unseen eyes. Kaelin and Ilara stood together in the moonlight, the distance between them closing with each shared word, each glance, each breath. "You have changed me," Kaelin said softly, his voice almost a growl. "I was always the Alpha, always the protector, always the ruler." But now you have awakened something deeper, something untamed, and I do not know if I can return to what I was." Alara reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw. "Then do not return," she said. "We can face the world together. Feral or not, strong or not, we will face it together." For a long moment they simply stood there, the mist curling around them, the castle silent behind them, and the forest whispering secrets of old magic and old scars. "You must understand," Kalen said finally, his voice low, "that this bond between us, it is not just desire, it is fire and shadow, danger and trust, and once it is fully awakened it cannot be undone." "I understand," Alara replied, "and I am ready." A sudden howl broke through the night, a long, mournful sound that echoed through the forest. Kalen stiffened, his wolf instincts flaring. Alara felt the raw power in him, fierce and untamed, and she knew that their trials were far from over. "Stay close," he commanded, his eyes glowing amber in the moonlight. "The night is not safe, and neither is the world outside." Alara nodded, her hand finding his, fingers entwining. She felt his strength, his danger, his wildness, and for the first time she did not fear it. She felt alive in a way she had never known, fierce, unbroken, bound to him by scars and fire, trust and longing. Together they watched the moonlight dance across the trees, the wind carrying whispers of old magic and old enemies. And Alara knew, with a certainty that was both thrilling and terrifying, that nothing, neither the forest, nor the clans, nor even the Alpha's own feral nature, could break the bond that now tied them together. The storm was coming. And this time there would be no shadows to hide in, no walls to shelter them. Only fire, only trust, and only the fierce, untamed bond that had been awakened between them. The sky above the northern forest was dark with clouds, heavy and low, as though the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Lightning streaked across the horizon, illuminating the castle towers in jagged flashes. The wind carried the scent of rain, earth, and something older, something ancient and untamed that stirred in the forests beyond. Alara stood on the castle battlements, her cloak whipping around her legs, watching the storm gather. Beside her, Kalen's amber eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and wild, reflecting the storm within him as well as the one outside. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. The feral tension in him was stronger than ever, the wolf inside him brushing against the surface, threatening to break free. Alara nodded, her hands brushing over her own scars as if drawing strength from them. "I am ready. Whatever comes, we face it together." Kalen studied her, a mixture of awe and longing in his gaze. "You do not know what you ask," he warned. "The enemy is older than any of us. Magic flows in their veins, shadows twist around them, and they will test every part of us, our courage, our trust, our hearts." "I know," she said softly but firmly. "I have seen fear, I have carried pain, and I have survived. That is enough for me to stand by your side." For a long moment they simply stared at each other, the storm raging around them, the castle silent save for the distant rumble of thunder. Then Kalen reached out, taking her hand in his, the heat of his palm grounding her in the chaos. "You have changed me, Alara," he said quietly. "I was the Alpha, feared and respected, but distant, untouchable. I thought I could hold the wolf in me forever, control it completely. But you awaken something I cannot hide, something I cannot tame, and I do not want to." Alara felt a tremor in her chest, a mixture of fear, awe, and longing. "Then do not," she whispered. "I will be your anchor, and if the wolf comes, we face it together." Kalen's lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time in days he smiled. It was small, almost shy, but it carried the weight of 1,000 emotions: danger, desire, trust, and something like hope. The night descended, thick and heavy, as Kalen led Alara into the heart of the forest. The trees were dark and looming, their branches twisting like fingers, the ground soft with moss and fallen leaves. Magic hung in the air, subtle but potent, and Alara could feel it brush against her skin. "They are close," Kalen murmured, his senses alert. The curse is alive, older than our bloodlines, and it knows we are here. It will test us, and it will not yield to weakness. Alara's heart pounded, but she kept her hand firmly in his. "We will not fail," she said. Kalen's jaw tightened. "I cannot promise safety," he admitted. "But I can promise this: I will not let it harm you, not while I breathe." They moved deeper into the forest, and the air grew colder, charged with an unnatural energy. Shadows flickered between the trees, moving faster than the eye could follow, whispering in voices that seemed older than the world itself. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. A dark figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, its eyes glowing faint red in the dim light. The curse had taken form, a wraith-like creature born from ancient magic, hunger, and malice. Kalen stepped forward, his feral instincts flaring. His amber eyes glowed brighter, and his movements became fluid, predatory. "Stay behind me," he warned, his voice low and commanding. Alara nodded, though she refused to step back entirely. She would not hide from this, she would not hide from him. She had chosen this, chosen him, and chosen the bond they shared. The creature lunged, swift and silent, but Kalen met it with a force that seemed almost unnatural. He moved with the precision of a hunter and the ferocity of a storm, striking and dodging with power that made the very air around them tremble. Alara watched, her heart hammering, until a shadow lunged at her from the side. Reflexively, she drew herself back, but before she could fall, Kalen's hand shot out, gripping her arm and pulling her close. "Do not move," he growled. "I have you." The wolf inside him roared in response to the threat, a deep, resonant sound that shook the trees. He fought with both human cunning and feral strength, a perfect balance of control and chaos. And through it all, he never let go of her hand, his eyes constantly searching hers for signs of fear or weakness. The battle raged on, the storm above echoing the clash below. Alara felt her own pulse race, not with fear but with awe. She had seen Kalen in action before, but never like this, never fully unleashed, never fully alive. And yet beneath the feral strength she could see him, the man he was, fighting not for power but for her, for them. Finally, with a roar that seemed to shake the forest itself, Kalen struck the curse down. The shadow dissolved into mist, leaving the forest eerily quiet, the storm above slowly breaking into scattered rain. He stood, chest heaving, hair matted with sweat, but his eyes immediately found hers. "You are safe," he said, his voice low and intense. "I promised you, and I keep my word." Alara ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, feeling the warmth, the strength, the danger all at once. "We did it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We survived." Kalen held her close, the feral edge in him softening, melting into something more tender. "No," he said, "you survived. I only fought because I could not bear to lose you." Her heart tightened at the confession. The alpha, fierce and untamed, vulnerable in this one moment, and it was hers to hold, hers to trust. The next morning the castle basked in the aftermath of the storm. The forest was quiet, the air fresh and clean, and the sun painted gold across the towers. Inside the castle, Kalen and Alara walked through the halls together, their bond unspoken but undeniable. The Luna watched them carefully, her expression unreadable. "You have changed him," Seraphine said quietly to Alara later that day. "And perhaps you have changed yourself as well. Be careful. Power is a dangerous thing." Alara nodded. "I understand, my lady." But some bonds cannot be undone. Kalen's presence was near, always near. And though he did not need to speak, Alara could feel his awareness, his protectiveness, his quiet devotion. The feral side of him was no longer just a threat. It had become a shield, a force tethered by trust, respect, and something deeper, love that had grown through trials, scars, and fire. In the days that followed, the kingdom began to stir with rumors. Allies and rivals alike whispered of the Alpha and the servant who had awakened the fire in him, of the power they shared, of the courage and loyalty that could not be ignored. But Alara and Kalen remained focused. their bond tempered by fire and tested by shadows. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting red and gold across the castle, Kalen led Alara to the highest tower. The view stretched for miles, the forest, the mountains, the kingdom they had sworn to protect. "You have changed everything," Kalen said softly. "The wolf inside me, it is no longer a curse, not entirely. It is part of who I am, but it is tempered, guided by you, by us, by what we share." Alara looked out at the horizon, the wind brushing her hair across her face. "And we will face whatever comes next," she said. "Together," Kalen's hand found hers and he held it tightly. "Together," he echoed. The storm had passed, but they knew that life would continue to challenge them. Enemies would rise, magic would stir, and the wolf within Kalen would never fully rest. Yet in that moment, standing atop the tower with the one person who had seen every scar, every fear, and every truth, Kalen felt something he had never known before: peace. Alara smiled, leaning slightly into him. "You are not alone anymore," she said softly. "And neither am I." Kalen's amber eyes softened, and for the first time he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Then we are both free," he said. The castle walls stood tall behind them, the forest stretched endlessly before them, and the horizon promised both challenge and hope. Their bond had been forged in fire, tested in shadow, and tempered in love. And though the future was uncertain, they would face it together, fierce, unbroken, and united. In that moment, with scars acknowledged and hearts aligned, Kalen and Alara realized something eternal. Some bonds, once awakened, can never be undone. And some fires, once lit, will burn forever.